Guys, so today just a little talk on the meta and what's changing and what's going on. Um, yeah, so as a lot of you hate meat grinders, because I see it all the time in comments on stream or just on other people's as well. I thought I'd do a little talk on the meta, what's changing, what's going on. Right now, it is still sort of meat grinder meta. You still have the very top of the game using a lot of them. However, that all may be true, but things are definitely changing. Um, for instance, for the um, for the grinders, there's a couple ways you can counter them. A lot of people say, like, oh, I hate meat grinders, they're just too tanky, too strong, all that sort of stuff. Something like this build here, this narwhal, is a really hard counter because basically all it does is on the cab side of a build, if you can get rid of all the grinders in front of the cab, you basically just completely stop them from moving. So say this build, say narwhal, it's very quick, and then you see the Odin underneath the front of the build, you just shoot it, and you completely disable one player out of the game. Takes, not very long to do. Really easy sort of build to counter grinders is, yes, it can be on the grinder like this build is, but the narwhal can also be placed on an ML, it can be placed on a hover, placed on loads of different things, but yeah, the grinder version seems the best because obviously you can mount more grinders, but and it's tankier. But yeah, absolutely hard counter to grinders. If you're fighting a full grinder team, use some narwhals. It will bring you a lot of success. Yeah, and then also there is other things. So as this ML, from what I understand, a couple of months ago or weeks ago, they released a thing saying about the plan changes, and the recent changes, those haven't been addressed in the recent balance changes. From what I can see, next balance changes are not related to the grinders on the one that they released on April 11th. So yeah, I assume that they are gonna do something related to the grinders because in the previous one they said they were going to nerf like acceleration, tonnage, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I expect the grinders to be nerfed at some point anyways. But while this is still meta, there is also another meta like brewing in the dark, which is also top of the game, but is not quite fully, on all builds meta. For instance, say a Mastodon, the weakest thing about the Mastodon is if you're on a dog or you're on something that it can push it quite hard. It really struggles to defend itself, so the meat grinders give it some of that leeway because it can still grind builds, still deal damage without having to use its guns, which have compared to a lot of the meta weapons as well, like Nemesis or say a Punisher, it has quite a slow reload rate. So yeah, a lot of time Masto can't defend itself up close, which is why a Masto grinder, you see a lot of them in Clan Wars, these sort of things, a lot of them going around. These obviously are still sort of better than the ML, where the ML can't really defend itself because it just doesn't have the same protection as the grinders do of just pure damage if you go into it, right? However, this sort of build, I do believe very soon will be the top of the game. I think at the moment we see a lot of grinders, and that's fine. But I do think these sort of like ML Mastodons, definitely the ML Punnies are just meta at the moment. They are just better than the grinder versions. So yeah, but ML Punny, I suspect perhaps ML Typhoon as well. Maybe some this sort of stuff. All will eventually be sort of very top of the game as well. Because the movement part is just very, very strong. It works really well in all the sort of meta comps at the moment. Highly successful, really good movement, good speed. Oyaben gives it bonuses as well for the speed as well. Just makes the whole build sort of really quite fluid in comparison to a grinder. The only difference is obviously you lack that damage when you're ramming into the build, but you can just outturn them, outpower them, use some of your game IQ to maneuver and win those sort of fights. Because things like this punny grinder, they're just sort of fine. They're fine. And when these get nerfed, and the MLs are back in the meta, there is another meta that will come from that, because whenever there's been MLs or spiders, there's always been hovers. They always seem to come back whenever there's a sort of a slower moving part. Because the thing about the grinder is it's quite fast. Most grinders are going 60, 70, 65. They're not slow, massive builds. You know, the MLs are substantially slow. You know, they go, depending on whether you have Colossus, Pegasus, or Oyaban, they go from 52 to 54 sort of range. So there is a definite speed gap there. And I think very good players, especially in clans like Blame or Rush, will, maybe ourselves as well here, will be using a mixture, I think. Post grinder, what, third nerf or second nerf in a row, whenever that comes. I think it will be a case of these sort of like hover builds will come back into the meta, come back into the fold. But yeah, this is, as I said, if you want to counter grinders, just use a narwhal. But I do think for sure, for now, on punny, the meta is on ML. You don't want to be using a punny grinder. It's just worse. You should really just be using the ML. Yeah, things like the Mastodon, all these things that I think will just rise into the meta as the grinder gets nerfed. Because it's just a really good movement part, has a really good resistance, has high durability, good speed, not amazing, but good enough. You know, 53 is fine. On my other pun, I think it's 54. Is it 54? Yeah, 54 with the Oyaban. Yeah, so it's not bad. You know, it's really not bad. But it does mean that things like hovers will come back into the fold because the grinders, so the MLs won't be able to catch up. Whereas the grinders sort of can because they just are that fast. You know, most grinders, yeah, like 60 sort of thing. They're just quite fast. They have great turning as well, really great turning, and going 60 is just wicked. But yeah. Anyway, that'll do it for today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will be maybe streaming for the first session on the weekend, depending on my internet. I had to reset my internet on Tuesday because the first game we played Rush, we lost, but my internet in the first round of it was just complete fucking garbage. And then sort of throughout the stream, I had people saying like, "Oh, your stream quality isn't great," and I was like, "Yeah, I think my internet is just fucked." But yeah. Anyway, that'll do for today's video. Have a good rest of your day. Play some narwhals to counter grinders and start looking at the MLs. The MLs are coming back, and are already back. So yeah, have a good one. Bye.